All right, everybody, welcome back to Horn Takes. It's been a while. We're going to do another edition of the Bullpen. Texas baseball goes out and gets the sweep over West Virginia. They get a share of the Big 12 regular season championship. They get the number one seed in the Big 12 tournament. So let's talk about this West Virginia series. So if you listen to the show last Thursday, we talked all about this series. We talked about West Virginia coming in ranked 6th, needing to win one game to do something they've never done before, which was win the Big 12 regular season title outright. Not sure if they've shared it or not, but they definitely haven't won it outright. And all they had to do was get into Austin, actually get out of Austin with one win, and they'd have done it. And this is a West Virginia team, folks, that going back to the beginning of 2022 has not lost 3 games straight at all. And they're the only D1 team that can say that. Only D1 team in the country, 300-something D1 baseball teams, that could say going into the series last weekend, they had not lost 3 straight games in the last 2 seasons. That's pretty amazing, to be perfectly honest. And it's amazing. It's amazing that I don't think it's so much amazing that they hadn't lost 3 straight games. It's kind of amazing to me that they're the only team that can say that. So those were some pretty interesting little tidbits. I didn't know 100%. I didn't know they hadn't lost 3 straight games at that point. I knew that they needed one game to win the regular season title. But I didn't know that they were the only team since the beginning of 2022 to not lose 3 straight games at all, not one single time. That's pretty awesome. Anyways, West Virginia comes into town. They're sitting good to host a regional for sure. Tons of talk about them hosting a super regional, which would be a massive deal for West Virginia. I assume the town of Morgantown. I assume the student body. I could see them getting real wild over that. But that was kind of the groundwork. Texas unranked, Texas needing a sweep for any shot at all to even share the Big 12 regular season title, and they needed some help after they got a sweep. So, looking at the series, we've seen Texas be pretty mediocre. We saw Texas be really mediocre against Oklahoma and get swept in that series at home. We've seen them lose series. The Oklahoma State series is a good example where the bullpen just couldn't hold it together late and cost them late in games. And then we've seen other series. I think Baylor's a good example where the bullpen almost let it get away from them to the point where, man, without some offensive heroics, like they could have lost the Baylor series, which was a series they won 2-1 and really should have swept. So we've seen this Texas team just kind of go, sort of run the gamut of what you would expect to see from a team. They swept Texas Tech, and I didn't expect that to happen. I don't think very many people in the country expected that to happen. And then they also go out and they have these series where they either completely shit the bed like the OU series, or they almost completely shit the bed like the Baylor series, Oklahoma State series. So coming in, we talked about it. I picked West Virginia to win this series, and I said it on the show Thursday. I think it's way more likely that West Virginia gets this sweep in this series than Texas gets a sweep in this series. Guess that shows you what I know, right? I think Texas had their best series of the season, totally. Offensively, pitching-wise, defense, best put-together series they've had, especially in Big 12 play. I think the starting pitching was absolutely outstanding. Lucas Gordon went 7 innings in game 1, only gave up 4 hits, 1 walk. He had 8 Ks and no runs allowed through 7. LBJ goes 5 1/3 in game 2, giving up 5 hits, 2 walks. He had 11 Ks and only allowed 2 runs. And then Tanner Witt. Tanner Witt's a guy we've talked about. He made his 3rd start. He went 3 innings in game 3 on 44 pitches, which is, I think, his highest pitch count up to this point was 40. So he's building a little bit. We've talked, if you listen to the show the last couple of times we've done the bullpen, we've talked about, Tanner Witt and coming back from that type of injury and not knowing what those steps were necessarily, but seeing that he is taking steps. He's taking positive steps towards, hopefully being a guy. Man, if this team can get past the regional and get into a super regional, maybe Tanner Witt's a guy that can come on and give you some really solid innings in a super regional rubber match and get your ass sent to Omaha. So that's kind of where Tanner Witt is right now. He gave up 1 hit, 1 walk. He had 3 Ks. Picked up his 2nd win of the season, just 3 starts. I think that's positive. Witt has not looked great. Witt has certainly not looked like Witt looked before the injury. But I think for him to come in and be able to give Texas some solid innings at this point after his injury and his surgery and at this point in his recovery, I think that's great, man. I think it's a positive sign for the Texas coaching, positive sign for the Texas pitching staff and for him as well, obviously. Bullpen was good, but I got some stats for you. This really just illustrates how good the starting pitching was in this series for Texas. The bullpen gave up 7 of the 9 West Virginia runs. However, through 11 and 2/3 innings, they had 8 Ks, only gave up 7 walks, which is something that's been a huge problem for the bullpen. Walks, hit batsmen, and wild pitches are something that have absolutely, when it's gone bad for Texas, that's where it's gone bad. Those 3 things by the bullpen have sort of been the catalyst for their bad series and, ridiculous meltdowns at the end of games. But the bullpen looked really good. I think there was only 1 hit batsman that entire group, or 1 wild pitch. I don't think they hit anybody. You listen to the show on Thursday, you heard us talk about J.J. Weatherholt. This guy that probably none of y'all have heard of. I'll be honest, I hadn't heard of him until I started researching West Virginia for this series and getting some stuff together for the show last Thursday. I didn't know who J.J. Weatherholt was. I had heard announcers say West Virginia probably has the Big 12 Player of the Year on their roster, and he probably will be a finalist for the Golden Spikes Award. So J.J. Weatherholt comes into this series with a nation-leading 466 batting average. He does it all, folks. This guy can steal. He hits for power. He hits for extra bases. He's a really good ball player. Texas pitching held him to 2 for 13. 154 batting average on the weekend. So that's outstanding. And West Virginia hitters, West Virginia as a team hit 20, they were 20 of 97. So 206 batting average for the weekend, and that's 100 points lower than their average as a team. So the Texas pitching, man, you've probably heard me say it. If you listen to the show at all, or you see these little shorts on TikTok, or you watch the show on YouTube or Facebook, as we stream it live. I've said it so many times. If this pitching staff can just be consistent, they don't have to be great. They just need to be like not bad. They need to be able to do the right things, which is get the ball over the plate, make those hitters put the ball in play. Don't give anything away for free. And they absolutely did that in this series and against a really good team. Now, listen, I think West Virginia is, I looked at their rank and I said, number 6, really? I look at their record. I look who they've played. I'm just like, I don't know about this being the number 6 team in the country. I think they're sort of taking advantage a little bit of a down Big 12 in the same manner that TCU did in football last year. So no doubt, like TCU, we've said it a million times, TCU was a good football team. I mean, made it to the freaking national championship. You don't do that unless you're a good football team. But we also talked about how they did not look like the type of team that their record shows they are. And I posited that was because the Big 12 in football was just not good last year. I mean, Texas was better last year than they were the year before. Oklahoma was immensely worse. Oklahoma State wasn't as good. Baylor wasn't as good. So TCU took advantage of the fact, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's what sort of combat and competition is about, taking advantage of weakness, right? And so the Big 12 was down in football, and I think the Big 12 is a little down in baseball this year. And I think that's why you got West Virginia showing up so positively on a national scale. They survived all of that. They made it through this Big 12 schedule, which normally, if a team coming into this series last weekend had done what West Virginia did, normally you do that in the Big 12, you're a really good baseball team. And I still think West Virginia is a good baseball team. So don't take me the wrong way there for either one, TCU or West Virginia. I just think not as good as what you normally see. So then we look at the offense. The top 6 in the order were absolutely amazing again. 28 of Texas's 35 hits came from the top 6 in the order. 24 of Texas's 29 RBIs in this series came from the top 6 in this order, to include Porter Brown in his 8 RBI night in Game 1. This guy absolutely goes off in Game 1. Has a RBI single to start it off, a 3-run home run to right field, a 2-run home run to damn near center field. It cleared right where the wall meets the center field wall. So the right center field wall in the gap where it kind of bends into center field, that's where that ball went out. Damn near dead center. And then he caps it off with an opposite field 2-run home run into the bullpen in left field. I mean, he's one of only, I think there's 5 other Texas Longhorns that have had 8 RBIs in a single game. Or no, maybe it was 5 other Texas Longhorns hit 3 home runs in a single game. That's what it was. So he tied for the school record for home runs in a game. Man, I was hoping he'd pop another one. He was just on fire. Patient at the plate. The kid that threw for West Virginia Thursday night threw a lot of trash. He's not a guy that has a very overpowering fastball, but he could throw a lot of his off-speed stuff for strikes. And he had a couple different off-speed pitches. So what Texas had to do at the plate Thursday night was be really patient, and they absolutely jumped all over West Virginia. 8 of Texas's 9 home runs in this series came from the top 6. The top 6 in the lineup hit .405 over the weekend, which that's really good. The entire lineup was .350 on the weekend. So another, the pitching was great. The offense was great. Texas jumped all over West Virginia early in all 3 games. 19 of the 29 runs they scored in this series were scored in the first 3 innings of each of those 3 games. So, again, what Texas did in that series against West Virginia was what I think a lot of people, myself included, sort of thought Texas might be able to do if they just start doing some things a little bit better. So, state of the program address. Texas is 38-18, headed into the Big 12 tournament, which starts tomorrow, 9 a.m. Ranked 20th in the country, so they went from unranked to ranked 20th, and they haven't been ranked. It's been a while since Texas has been ranked. 15-9 in Big 12 play, that's good enough for a share of the regular season title and a number 1 seed in the Big 12 tournament, and they got that through all the tie breaks. So I think the rule goes like this. Head-to-head, it goes by obviously who won the series head-to-head. But since Oklahoma State, West Virginia, and Texas all finished with the same record, then it goes to how many wins you had against the other 2 opponents that you're tied with. So Texas swept West Virginia, took 1 from Oklahoma State, so they had 4 wins against that group. West Virginia only had 2 wins against that group, and Oklahoma State only had 3 wins against that group. So that's why Texas got the number 1 seed, headed into the tournament. That's a pretty amazing weekend. I mean, looking at the standings heading into last weekend, they were 3rd, I believe, and their shot where they could have ended up, ran from 1st to 4th, I believe. Actually, going into the weekend, I think it was 1st to 5th. So a pretty tight-knit group up at the top of the Big 12 heading into the final weekend, which was kind of cool. The pitching, again, we talked about it. Man, the team ERA is 4.06, which is a little bit up from their best this year. I think earlier in the season they were right around 3.5, which at that time was good enough for, I think the highest they've been is 7th or 8th in the country in team ERA. But Lucas Gordon and LBJ are sitting at 248, 281, respectively. LBJ has been great in that second spot of the rotation. And then you got Witt that's got an 8.22. I don't think that's fair. Witt's coming off that injury. I mean, that's his stats. I'm not going to say that's not his stats, but it is what it is, right? And he's been getting better, I think, every single week. So, is he a guy that's going to come in and just take over this thing and lead Texas and be that third guy that nobody can beat? Probably not. But he probably is starting to get to be the guy that can give you some really solid innings. And if the offense can do what it's done a lot recently, stay hot, get some runs, he might be the guy that can kind of set that up for you. Now, those 3 guys are 15-4 on the season. So, again, really solid. I think the bullpen still has holes. I think this team's going to need big leads as it's heading into the postseason. It's going to have to continue that, which hasn't been a problem in most cases. The offense, 302 team batting average. Again, we have talked about it. Man, we started out the season talking about a couple of guys. Actually, we started out the season talking about nobody. There was really nobody offensively that was doing anything. It was really rough offensive start for Texas. And the interesting thing, again, is the pitching staff is kind of what held Texas and kept Texas in a lot of games early on in the season and against some quality opponents as well. Well, the bats just weren't around. And then on that long homestand, the bats started getting hot. And we talked about Powell. Powell was a guy that just kind of broke out of nowhere for Texas. And then for the longest time, it was Peyton Powell and it was Eric Kennedy that were just killing people. Both those guys were batting over 400 for a long time. But there was really nobody else. Porter Brown got a little bit of a hot start, then cooled off, and now he's come on again. Obviously, Dylan Campbell did the Dylan Campbell, the same thing he did last year. The first, third to almost even half of the season, just really, really rough offensively. And now that dude is completely on fire. Garrett Guillemet's a guy that started off a little bit slow, but he's done really, really well. So you got these 6 guys, and they're all batting over 300. They got 5 of the 6 of those guys are double-digit home run guys. 5 of those 6 guys are over 40 RBI. Every single one of them's got double-digit doubles, and there's 11 triples between them. And then you started to see Tanner Carlson come on. We'll talk about him in a minute. He was batting over 300 as out of the DH spot. And now you got Jalen Flores, who is a guy that Texas tried him at third base. I think they might have even tried him early on this season at first base. But finally, David Pierce got tired of watching Mitchell Daly struggle at the plate and threw Jalen Flores, which I think shortstop is Jalen Flores' like natural position. I think that's what he played in high school. Threw him out there and gave him more than just a couple at bats. Oh, by the way, Jalen Flores probably did some DHing as well earlier on in the season. But he's a guy that just hasn't had a lot of opportunities at the plate. He's getting a little better. He struggled. He struggled since going in and sort of replacing Daly. And I say he's replaced Daly. I think at this point you can say he's replaced Daly. Mitchell Daly hasn't started a game since probably the first week of March. First week of May. So Jalen Flores goes 3 for 9 with 3 RBI against West Virginia. His batting average is still pretty low. But he had a really nice series against a really quality opponent. And I always said, I think Pierce needs to get somebody in there and give them some time to see what they can do. It's not fair to these guys to just throw them out there for a pinch hit or, throw them out there for one start and expect them to produce right off the bat. Sometimes that'll happen, but usually takes a little bit of time to see college pitching. Jalen Flores is a freshman, true freshman. So we're certainly not losing anything defensively by Jalen Flores being out there. He's as good or better than Mitchell Daly defensively. And his bat's starting to get a little bit hot. And I think, if you can get 7 or 8 of your 9 guys that go up to the plate batting in the 300s, hitting a lot of extra base hits, putting the ball over the fence, which Jalen Flores did do against West Virginia, you're a tough out. I mean, you're a tough lineup to have to face. Because it doesn't matter if 1 or 2 of you have struggle during a game or during a series. There's 6 or 7 other guys out there that have that type of ability and have proven they can sort of perform that same role. So injuries are something we haven't had to talk about at all this year, outside of Tanner Witt, but he was injured before the season. So we all knew we were getting there. He would come back sometime late in the season. And we didn't really know what to expect from him. We just kind of hoped he could go out there and work some rust out of that arm and be confident going into next year, right? But again, he's actually done pretty well. But Tanner Carlson, who I just mentioned, was hitting over 300 and has really sort of solidified himself in that DH role It looked like he had a cast on his arm of some sort of cast or some sort of brace during the senior day presentation on Saturday. And I've not heard if that's a permanent, serious type injury or if it's just precautionary. Seems like in college football, especially, every time a guy twists his ankle, they throw him in a boot and they give him a scooter and tell him, keep all your weight off that ankle, whether it's just a normal sprain or what. Precautionary. I get it. So I don't know if that's I don't know if Tanner's going to be done for a while or maybe done for the rest of the season. Hopefully not, because he was coming on. He was doing really well. The other thing is he's a grad transfer guy. He's a senior. This is it for Tanner Carlson. So I hope he can hope whatever he had going on is not serious. We'll see him again. If it is serious, that's the seventh guy in the lineup that's hitting over 300. You got Jack O'Dowd, who's just shy of 300. He's batting 276. So a team that started off offensively pretty poorly and then found some guys, and then those guys kind of went away, and now they're all kind of coming together at the same time, and this is the perfect time of the year to be doing it. But, yeah, I think you look at this team, the starting pitching and that lineup are pretty solid. I think they're capable of going out and challenging. I think they're capable of going out and challenging anybody in the country. I think Pierce needs to find some dependable arms out of the bullpen. And there are arms that are capable of being dependable. There's really nobody in that bullpen that has just stunk every time they put him in. I think for me, that's what's so frustrating, and it's so hard to peg this team is because you don't know what you're going to get. We've watched some of these guys come out and just have tremendous performances out of the bullpen, and then we've also seen them come out and just act like they've never pitched before. So maybe it's not so much Pierce needs to find them. I think Pierce needs to find whatever the formula is that's going on that's making them play well versus not, and that's probably impossible. To me, it's almost like one of those Augie things. How Augie used to be able to pull people's levers and get people to do. Augie Garrido could get players to do shit they absolutely almost before he talked to them, they didn't believe they could do it. And I'm sure in some cases they didn't believe they could do it even after they heard from Augie. But Augie just had that knack of being able to pull those levers and get people in the right mindset. If Pierce can get that going with the bullpen, and that can be a dependable group, I'm not saying. All I'll say is Texas has the quality potential to wind up in Omaha again. We said it a couple shows ago. If David Pierce can get this team to Omaha, David Pierce has got a little bit of magic going on as well. Because this was a team that was not looking like a team before the season even started. This was a team you knew lost a lot of really key guys. And there was a lot of question marks about who was going to be able to come in and try to replace those guys, much less live up to what some of those guys in that lineup did last year. And then you watched them all season. Starting at the season, this is just not a good baseball team. This may be a really rough year for Texas baseball and Texas baseball fans. David Pierce is like an anomaly to me, man. I personally, and I don't know him at all, I've never even spoken a word to him. But you know how when you look at a certain person and you kind of see the way they interact with people and you just say to yourself, that dude seems like a dick. That's kind of what I feel like about David Pierce. He just seems like he's a little bit of a dick. And what's interesting about that is a lot of baseball people seem like they're a little bit of a dick. And it's almost like you can't be a good baseball player or a good baseball. You can't be good and be involved in baseball unless you've got a little bit of that in you. And I don't know. There's almost like this arrogance with him, and there's stories about, he lost his whole coaching staff last year. There wasn't any reason in the world why any of those guys shouldn't have been back, except they didn't want to come back. You lose a guy like Gavin Cash, who probably didn't leave Texas because he wasn't getting playing time. I mean, the dude was playing behind the Golden Spikes Award winner and the Texas Longhorn home run record winner and the leader in home runs in Division I last year. I don't think Gavin Cash said, I'm just not getting a chance here, and decided to leave. I think there was something going on with him, between him and David Pierce. And then that guy goes to Tech, and I mean, I haven't checked up on him in a while, but he was having a tremendous season. Did have a tremendous season. So, but the other side of David Pierce is he's been to Omaha 2 of the last 3 years. His other trip in 2018 with a team that, probably shouldn't have made it. Now, his record at the College World Series hasn't been all that great. He's had two and outs. And, as a fan, and I'm sure even the people that were involved in those 2 and outs were probably elated to just go to the College World Series. And all the fans, you should just be elated to get to the college. Texas fans are spoiled when it comes to baseball. Texas baseball has been to the College World Series more times than any other school by far. And so it's kind of like this expectation, when the College World Series rolls around. I think there's a lot of Texas fans that are just really casual that wake up at that point in the season and they say, oh, well, who's Texas playing? And if they're not there, they're just kind of like shocked. Texas isn't in the College World Series. I did some math. It was several years ago. Texas had gone to the College World Series some stupid percentage of the amount of College World Series there actually was. It'd be like reaching the Elite Eight in basketball, like damn near 50% of the time. Which, of course, we know is, I don't want to say we know. I feel like nobody's done that. So we'll see what Pierce can do. Got to figure out, and maybe it's not figure out, but that bullpen's got to produce if this team wants to continue to move on in the postseason. We talked a little bit about once Texas did not sweep San Jose State, that I kind of at that point was thinking, hosting a regional is probably just out for Texas. I thought going into that series, they needed to sweep the San Jose State series, they needed to sweep West Virginia, and they need to end up probably in the final of the Big 12 tournament to be a regional host. I think with that sweep over West Virginia and the way they did it, there was no close games in that series. It was about as dominating of a performance as you can have. So I think there might still be an outside shot of Texas hosting a regional. I think if Texas wins the Big 12 championship tournament, it's a lock at that point. I just can't imagine, a team that wins the Big 12, and the Big 12 is the third highest RPI league in college baseball right now, behind SEC, and I believe ACC is number 1. Maybe I got those two switched. Doesn't really matter. They're third in RPI. So a team that can win a share of that regular season title and go on and win the tournament, I think you got to look at that team and say that team's probably one of the top 16 best teams in the country. And I think Texas has some built-in advantage too. They're gonna draw good. I mean, the gate's gonna be good if Texas is hosting a regional. I think maybe playing in a final of the Big 12 tournament will get it done. Remember, this was a team last year that was pretty good, right? Made it to the College World Series. They finished 5th in the Big 12 regular season. And then they made a run in the tournament, lost to a really, really good Oklahoma team in the Big 12 tournament championship. But it's all about the timing, right? We've talked about it. We have talked about it so much this year. And it happens every single year. These teams kind of come out of nowhere. Perfect example. There's 2 really good examples last year. Oklahoma didn't really get super hot until the end of last season. And they did it right before the Big 12 tournament. It catapulted them to a Big 12 tournament victory. And they went and played for the national championship against another team, Ole Miss, that wasn't like the cream of the crop in the SEC. But they both got hot. They both got this sort of invincible mindset on the pitching side of it. They both make it to the final. Ole Miss wins. It's all about the timing. So the interesting thing about baseball is, to me anyway, one of the interesting things about baseball, and this is almost at any level. Once you get, I won't say any level, I'd say high school and above, any of these teams are good enough to beat these other teams. Right? Like it's not like college football where you look at a Georgia going up against, I don't know, who's a shit school? Just like an absolute bad college football school. It doesn't matter. Just imagine just a really mediocre college football program. They're not beating Georgia like ever. Today, Georgia. It's not happening. But in baseball, that stuff can happen. And what really separates the teams that make it to Omaha and the teams that are really successful in Omaha, but what separates them and the other guys that also are talented and then probably at various points in this season have, people have said, that team can go to Omaha. It's when you get hot. It's when the bats start popping. It's when the pitching all falls in line. It's when the defense is good. When all those things line up for a team right at the end of the season, those are going to be there's 8 teams out there right now that all this shit is starting to come together for them, and they're going to be in Omaha. And I think Texas is a team that has that type of ability and has demonstrated over the course of this season that they can get that way. Now, really, it just depends on how long they can stay that way. Because I think they're going to head into this Big 12 tournament and they're going to have a lot of confidence. So they're the number 1 seed headed into the Big 12 tournament. Their division of the bracket is the least dangerous, in my opinion. They're 6-3 against the opponents in that division, and they won all 3 series with those 3 schools. I think the other division seems really dangerous to me. Got Oklahoma State, who won a series against Texas and also won a share of the Big 12 regular season. You got West Virginia, who won a share of the Big 12 regular season. You got a Texas Tech team who offensively can get really hot. Their pitching has struggled a lot this year. But that's a team that if they start to see the ball, they can drop like 15 runs on you. Heading into the Texas series, their offensive numbers were just incredible. And that was early in the season, but they had, I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but I started digging into this stuff and looking at their schedule and the results of their games. They had scored like more than 15 runs headed into the Texas series like 6 or 7 times already. They were averaging 12, 13 runs a game. That's a team that can get hot on you. And then Oklahoma is a team that won the whole damn Big 12 last year and inexplicably went into Austin and managed to sweep them. So I think if you look at just if you look at the teams that are there, Texas definitely wound up in the right side. They got KU, TCU. Oh, who's the other one? Doesn't matter. So Texas has KU at 12:30 tomorrow. The winner of that game will play at 4 p.m. on Thursday. The loser will play at 9 a.m. on Thursday. The tournament starts at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning with TCU and the aforementioned, I can't remember who they are, team. It's not Baylor. They're out. Oh, Kansas State. Kansas State, TCU, and Kansas are the 3 other teams in Texas's division for the Big 12 tournament. So I think you look at it, and Texas has to be the favorite to come out of their division. I think West Virginia has to be the favorite, although it's a really tough division. I mean, anything could happen in that one for sure. Anything can happen in either one of them, but I think you look at it, West Virginia won their series versus all of those opponents in their division as well. So I think you have to say they're the favorite. I think for Texas, winning those first 2 games, winning the first game is absolutely critical. But I think if you look at setting themselves up to get to the championship for this one, they really need to win the first 2. I still feel like we're a little shaky on day 3, even though Witt's been doing pretty well. It's kind of like, how far can Witt go and be good, right? Not just there. Like, he needs to be good. How long can he be good for? And then after that, what we've seen on these these third day games is it's pitch by committee, and and David Pierce is just kind of going through with what he's got left and trying to throw some innings together and hopefully get to the end with a W. So, it's not like past Texas teams where they could lose a game and you still were confident that they could go win 2 more games. So I think you win those 2 right off if you can, and you want to, right? Everybody wants to, but I think it's really important for Texas to do that. And you get a day of rest, which I think can be big. It can be big in the now, but it can also be big, a little bit later on down the road if you continue to advance. So I have no predictions at all for this Big 12 tournament. It's who wins the tournament is usually not that important. I think for Texas, if they can win this tournament, it's going to be really important. I think it's going to get them a regional host. Won't get them a super regional host. But we'll see what they can do. They start again tomorrow, 12:30. Join us next week on the cheap seats. We've been talking about it. We're going to have Chris from the Spurs Up Show. The timing just hasn't worked out, but we're going to try to get that done next week. And then join us again for the bullpen. We'll talk about the Big 12 tournament. We'll talk about the upcoming NCAA tournament. Subscribe to the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. Check out the YouTube channel or the Facebook page. TikTok, Twitter. You can find us at HornTakes. You can email me at horntakespodcast@gmail.com with all your comments, questions, concerns, and criticisms. I love them all. You guys have a good one. Hook 'em.